I have been wanting this interview for a very long time. First of all, can I introduce you to, and welcome to the show, Emeritus Professor Philippa Gander. Welcome to the show, Philippa.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you very much for the invitation, and sorry for the error on my part.
Oh, it was. Oh, well, thank God for that. There you are. No problems at all. It's nice to have you here. And so we've got quarter of an hour, so let's get through it. You are one of the world's leading experts in sleep. It has been your life's work, academically, and you might argue probably emotionally as well. In fact, you've been recognised by the Crown. You've got an Order of New Zealand Merit, which I think is the old EB. Is it the MBE or the old OBE? I can't remember, one of the two. It doesn't matter. You've been recognised by the Crown for your outstanding work in this area, and you've just recently written a book about sleep. Tell me the central thesis of your latest book. What is it?
Well, actually, sleep is only a third of the picture. And the book is really about the fact that all life on this planet has innate rhythms built in genetically, including us, and they are adaptations to the changes in the environment that happen with the day-night cycle. So we have rhythms, internal rhythms that are about 24 hours, and they get synchronized by the light-dark changes. There are internal rhythms in species that are related to the cycles of the moon, so the tides and the phases of the moon, and there are internally generated rhythms in species that are adaptations to the seasons and the orbit of the Earth around the Sun. So it's a kind of new field. One of my home field is called chronobiology, which nobody's ever heard of, but it's actually about how the way life on Earth has adapted to the changes that happen regularly in the environment. And so sleep, in my context, is a vital third of a cycle. So
it's a fascinating thesis. Your argument is that humankind, as well as every other creature on this planet, has evolved. You know, at first blush, it goes, well, of course they have, because
it's kind of obvious, really.
Yeah, it is. It is sort of obvious to the seasons, to whether it's light or it's dark, to whether or not it's got colder or it's got warmer, to whether or not the moon's full or not, all those sorts of stuff. But you're saying also, I mean, as we get older, there's a part of the book that really interested me, or at least the review of the book that I've read, that said that we started to interfere with those natural rhythms that were part of humankind ever since we have sort of evolved to now, because of artificiality of light, external stimuli, use of electricity, changing, if you like, internally and inside a building, the seasons that are outside. Have I got that right?
You have. And the essence of the thing is that all of the innate cycles that are genetically programmed into us, and everything all the way down to unicells, there's, algae have the same kind of clock mechanisms as we do for the day-night cycle, and they're genetically based. But they don't run on an exact 24-hour day. They run slightly differently, a bit longer or a bit shorter, and they are looking for cues in the environment to actually stay in step with the 24-hour day-night cycle. And for us, and for mammals and for a lot of other species, it's light. And we actually have a special input pathway through our eyes, separate from vision, which is keeping our major pacemaking clock in the brain in step with the outside world. So it's monitoring light intensity, and there are some studies that have shown that it even can monitor its blue light that it's especially interested in, and it monitors blue light even through your closed eyelids. So your internal body clock is running slightly slow in most of us, so a little bit faster than 24 hours in other people, but we're run a bit slow, and it's getting light on a regular basis, what it was, until we started using artificial light. So for most of the evolution of time of life on Earth, the day-night cycle has been an extremely reliable cue. And the other thing about that is that the day-night cycle changes, the length of the day changes reliably across the sense, or it did until we came along with artificial light.
So that's why I sleep better. I sleep better in winter. Is there a reason for that? It's darker.
Well, you have more dark time, and you possibly allow yourself more time to sleep. I don't know whether that's what is part of the picture for you, but yes, you have more dark time, and so you have more opportunity for sleep, because dark is better for sleep.
Now, the other thing that's here is that I'm assuming, so your basic thesis is, I think, that every part of my body is attuned to the way it is, the light, the darkness, the seasonality, etc. And and that's the reason we might be having sleep problems, anxiety problems, a whole series of things related to sleep, because we've interfered with that process.
Yeah, and there are some very systematic ways that we do it, one being shift work, and it's estimated that about 20% of the global working population is doing shift work.
Yep.
But just thinking about what's going on in your own body, so actually every cell in your body has a little bunch of what we call clock genes, and in most of your cells they're actually active, and they are producing a daily cycle in what we call clock proteins, and those clock proteins go out around the cell and they control a whole lot of other genes. And they control different genes in the cells in your liver, and to the cells in your heart, to the cells in your muscles, etc., etc. So each of your organs has got its own, what we call circadian rhythms, its own built-in daily rhythms. And all of that is held in sync, so your body is functioning, when you're supposed to be doing certain things, by this master clock that I was talking about in the brain that's light sensitive. And one of the things that can happen is, for example, if you eat a hamburger in the middle of the night, that's actually a separate cue to your gut and your liver, and it's trying to get your digestive system is actually being switched down by your brain clock, but now you're telling your gut that you're supposed to be eating, you're supposed to be working, and it doesn't work very well, and your gut gets out of sync with your brain, and various other things happen. So it's two things happen when you're not actually living in step with the day-night cycle, or a natural light cycle of 24 hours, or your imposed one of 24 hours. Then it's not only that you're out of step with the outside world, you're also out of step internally, and that can be part of the challenge of the health things that go along with shift work. And for anybody who's struggling with sleep, there's always going to be an impact on how you function when you're awake.
Including mentally.
Mentally and physically. The thing about sleep is we've kind of thought it was tradable time off. It's not. The brain is basically disconnecting from the outside world, but it's going through two completely different states, and it's doing a whole lot of essential processes that are just absolutely vital to how you function mentally and physically when you're awake. And in the long term, they're absolutely vital for your mental health and your physical health. And it's an interesting thing, I've been in this field for more than 40 years, and we've known this stuff for ages. And we know it in more and more detail, but we haven't actually been very successful in getting the message across that actually this is integral to every minute of every day of your life. And you are functioning like this, and we are messing around with it unintentionally, but you can see the arguments in the book that we're actually paying a high price as individuals and as a society, and potentially now, bigger picture, the impact of artificial light at night on whole ecosystems, both marine ecosystems and land-based ecosystems. Our artificial light at night is having very broad effects, and so it's not all a bad news story, because the new science gives us some really good alternative ways of doing and thinking about things. But it is something that, as a field, we've been really bad at communicating. And so that was really the motivation for the book, after 40 years of being in a field that nobody's heard of, but having the opportunity to work actually all over the world with different industries and people and bring the science into the debate and come up with better solutions to a lot of these problems. I've been very motivated for a long time to write a book which hopefully is going to be accessible for most people to have a look and get some ideas about what they might do for themselves, and maybe get a little bit more informed and potentially active about some of the things that we're doing wrong in the bigger picture.
Now, listen, and that's the reason I'm talking to you, because I was fascinated by it, and it's such a critical part of human existence. And you've got such good science to underpin the thesis that you're delivering in the book. But a couple of questions come out of that. A lot of people listening to this now will be getting artificial aids to sleep. I guess they'll range for alcohol in some people, through to sleep drafts, through to melatonin, which has become very popular in the last 10 to 15 years. Can I deal with the latter one first? Melatonin is being used by a lot of people. It's suggested as almost a palliative for people who need to get to sleep. Is it working? Is it a good thing? Is it a problem?
First thing I need to preface that with is that I am not a clinician. I'm not a doc. I don't diagnose and treat people, but I am a scientist, and I have concerns, and so do a lot of other people, about the use of melatonin. So in the short version, your master clock in your brain switches on melatonin synthesis in your brain shortly before you go to sleep, and it switches it off in the morning. So that's one of the things that your master clock uses to control other things in your body. But it does help with sleep, particularly if you are trying to sleep at the wrong part of your body cycle, which you do when you're making up time on jet lag or when you're doing night work. There is concern about its longer-term use and its use in some groups, because melatonin is much more, it's not a sleep hormone. Rats, who have the same kind of brain basically as us, have high melatonin at night and they're active at night. It certainly does help with sleep in humans, but it's also, for example, the main hormone that regulates the reproductive system in seasonal breeding. And there's still reasonable evidence that we were once seasonal, but in other mammals it switches the reproductive system on and off depending on the length of days. The amount you make depends on how much dark you get, because it also gets switched off by bright light. And so the amount you make naturally will be much less in the summer than it is in the winter, and that's how mammals like us know when to breed, when their reproductive systems switch on and off. And we don't know so much about how that works in humans because we've messed around with it so much. But melatonin does a lot more than just affecting sleep. So the kind of overall message is that, yep, it can be useful, particularly if you're trying to sleep out of step with your normal cycle. But with any sleep problem, there isn't going to be a single magic bullet. There are a whole range of different, what we call sleep disorders, just as in the way that there's a whole lot of different things can go wrong with you when you're awake. There's a whole lot of different things that can go wrong when you're asleep. And so melatonin may be the right thing, but it's not a magic bullet. There are a lot of other things that might need to be considered. I have a concern from the point of view of a scientist, and I'm not alone in that, about the widespread use of melatonin without careful thought about what else it might be doing.
It is almost the go-to from GPs this day. You've got 15 minutes, you're sitting
I know that.
And it's just like antidepressants. I've got 15 minutes with you. Yep. I've got a sleep problem here. Try some melatonin.
And we do have an issue in New Zealand that the whole field of sleep medicine is very underdeveloped here, by comparison even with Australia. I don't blame the GPs for that. They have very little resource to refer people to, except for breathing disorders during sleep. Yeah. And that's a bigger problem, there is a whole field of sleep medicine where we are not well served yet in New Zealand.
Now, tell me, the book's name and where can I get it from?
It's called Night Owls and Early Birds.
Night Owls and Early Birds,
And the subtitle is Rhythms of Life on a Rotating Planet. And it's available in a lot of bookshops now, but it's also available from Auckland University Press via their website as an ebook or as a paperback. So Auckland University Press, just look them up.
Good on you. And are you going around the country giving speeches to do it? Sort of book launches and things like that?
On and off, yes. Yep. I've done a lot of speechifying in my career, and so it's something I actually enjoy very much. I really do enjoy it. And, I do have this passion to make our science usable, because it can make a big difference, I believe, in people's lives. And also we deal with climate change. So I'm very motivated to talk about it, and thank you for the opportunity.
Well, the reason why is I think sleep is so important critical to mental health of individuals. So
it certainly is, and to physical health.
Yes, that's right, and physical health too.
About that per year.
Yeah. Actually,
if you don't sleep enough, you gain weight faster. How about that?
Yeah, that's one. And I'll tell you something else. Manchester United and all the top sports teams now, they're making people sleep because they see the values of sleep for their top sports professionals in terms of performance as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good on you. Thanks, Philippa.
It's just life. You can't get rid of it.
Good on you. Okay. Thank you, Philippa. Nice to talk to you. That is Professor Philippa Gander. Listen, I don't usually do this, But I read the book, or at least a review, a summary of the book, and I went, oh, this is fascinating. And in many ways, Professor Gander is talking, there'll be a lot of old wives' tales that support completely what Professor Gander is scientifically proving now. But if you have the opportunity, Night Owls and Early Birds. It's Professor Philippa Gander. She is top of a field in New Zealand, but she'd be one at the top of a field in the world. Worked with a lot of commercial operatives and things like that.